Hi, Kathy.
Hi.
Good morning. You hear me now?
It is. Thanks for having me.
We are happy to have you. So I'm just going to go ahead and tell the audience a little bit about you and the topic that you're going to be covering. In the meantime, you can set up your screen share.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so we have with us next Kathy Macdonald. She's going to be talking about what I think is a very relevant topic: identity theft, revenge porn, and blackmailing on the internet. Now, a little bit about Kathy. Kathy is a retired police officer with the Calgary Police Service with almost 3 decades of investigative and crime prevention experience. She regularly delivers keynote presentations at conferences on the topics of online fraud, identity theft, internet safety, and social engineering. Kathy instructs courses online through the University of Calgary, Faculty of Continuing Education on subjects including crime in the workplace, cybercrime prevention, and personal security. Kathy's new book, Cybercrime Awareness, Prevention, and Response, is the first comprehensive Canadian resource talking about how cybercrime affects individuals, businesses, governments, institutions, and organizations. Kathy is one of the leading investigators for Toddington International, a global leader in the provision of online research, internet investigation, and open source intelligence, OSINT framework training. In this capacity, she has investigated cases of revenge porn, hate crime, and conducts social media monitoring. Kathy holds a Master of Science in Security and Risk Management and is a Certified Protection Professional, CPP. In 2009, the Governor General of Canada invested Kathy with a member of the Order of Merit of the Police Forces in recognition of her commitment to cybercrime prevention. Kathy is on the Senate of the University of Calgary, and she was recently awarded one of the top 20 women in cybersecurity in Canada for 2020. Wow, that is really impressive, Kathy. That is a very impressive bio.
Thank you.
Without further ado, I'm handing the stage over to you, Kathy. It's all yours.
Okay.
You can share as well.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to this very prestigious conference. I'm very thrilled to be here and very grateful. So let me just turn my screen over to my presentation, and we'll get started. As you mentioned, I am speaking about identity theft, revenge porn, and blackmailing on the internet. And these are topics that I definitely spoke about many times as a police officer and as a cybersecurity person, although the names of these kinds of offenses have changed over the years, which I will be talking about as we go through this. But I really talk from a practical standpoint and also as in law enforcement and dealing with victims. So I will talk a little bit about that as well from a deny, deter, detect, and delay standpoint as well. But I want to first off start with a story about a young girl. She was late 20s. She had a boyfriend. Her parents did not like him. They were not going to have a long-term relationship. They were never going to get married. But he was madly in love with her, and he said to her, you know, please can we take some video of us together having sexual relations? I can't stand to be apart from you. I just want to have these videos so I can watch you anytime. She didn't want to do it. She said no. He said, I promise I will never show them to anyone else. So she eventually said, okay. And she cried. She went through with it. She was coerced and threatened. And she filmed these videos, about 5 or 6 of them. And of course, she was traveling out of the country, and she got a phone call from her best friend who said, I just saw your pictures online on our public page at work. She was absolutely devastated, came home, spoke to this boyfriend of hers, and he said, yeah, I'm so sorry. My phone was stolen at a party. However, I will help to get these videos and pictures off the internet. And this is a classic case of revenge porn. We've heard this over and over and over again. After that, she was ashamed, humiliated, always looking over her shoulder, embarrassed. She was doxxed. Her family and her friends got photos and pictures of her as well. And this was over the course of 5 years. It hasn't ended yet. So when I say the names of these offenses have changed, when we talk about revenge porn, we always talk about family and boyfriend, girlfriend, spouses, significant others. But once those pictures hit the internet, it turns into an industry. And there are people out there, excuse me, that monetize these pictures. And now it becomes something of value that you can trade and you can threaten and coerce and blackmail people with. So websites like Pornhub, that has many, many, many websites under their affiliate umbrella, they have categories of revenge porn, leaked videos, secret camera, fantasy. Here we had a public filming of an amputee in India who was monetized with millions of views. We also have voyeurism, and where there's an expectation of privacy. So those kinds of videos are also monetized as well in this underground world of pornography. And the interesting thing is that these homegrown videos of porn are actually more valuable than professional porn, where there are actual people consenting and actors and that sort of thing. So the homegrown porn actually has more value, and that's why there is so much that happens with the blackmail and the coercion and the threats and the harassment. When we talk about revenge porn, we also talk about something called sextortion. It's another new word for the same offenses, which include cyberbullying, luring, sexual violence, domestic abuse. So there's all sorts of names, including luring. They're all covered under these new headings of these crimes. For example, cyberbullying in Canada is illegal. It's illegal to distribute intimate images of a person where there was an expectation of privacy. And of course, these are done without the person's consent. And that person, the subject in those videos and photos of intimate images, can be of any age. It's not just for young people. So it's a very powerful piece of legislation, because the victims and the targets of these offenses are very devastated when their pictures are, all over the internet. And it's particularly harmful where young people are involved, people under the age of 18. They're particularly vulnerable because they don't have the emotional ability to deal with these incidents. So, of course, there's an increase in them taking their own life in some cases. So again, Pornhub is one of the websites out there. There are many, many, many out there that will trade and monetize these videos. When we talk about this, we also talk about sextortion online and videos. So what's happening, as you well know, in these data breaches that are out there, with the email addresses, now people want to crack the passwords. So they will do credential stuffing where they will crack the passwords and have the email address and contact people and say, we've seen what you're doing online. We know all your sneaky secrets. If you don't want us to tell the world what you've been doing, all your family and friends, you better send us some Bitcoin. So they are blackmailing them that way. As well, this is an actual example of a password that was cracked. The password was shadow. And this young lady was like wondering how somebody was able to get hold of her password and her email. She didn't sleep for 2 weeks knowing that somebody had access to this. And she was wondering whether she should send this Bitcoin because she didn't want anyone else to see what she was doing. Not that she was doing anything bad, but it's just the emotional response when you know that somebody now has access to your internet, to what you've been doing. And it's that devastation from the extortion and the blackmail and the threats. It's particularly dangerous, as I mentioned, when it involves young people, and often it does. We call that luring because there is quite a technique involved in grooming young kids. So there was an incident in the United States where 6 men were actually arrested, and they were very organized. They were identified and convicted, sentenced to about 171 years in jail. And what they were doing, they were meeting hundreds of young kids in web, chat rooms and forums and such. And they would actually hunt for the kids, the ones that were most vulnerable. Then they would talk to them. And so it was very organized. They would talk to them, and then they would loop them into other kids that were also taking their clothes off in front of the camera, the web cameras. And of course, they were always watching for the police. They did this for about 3 years without being caught. So they were able to acquire hundreds and hundreds of pictures, images. So they were actually sentenced, convicted. However, those pictures are still circulating in cyberspace, and that's the devastating part of it, is trying to remove these pictures because that's the victimization and re-victimization that can occur. And so these young people are open and vulnerable to blackmail on the internet. We had in Alberta, so I live in Calgary in Canada, in the province of Alberta. And so we had a young lady actually that was lured down to the States. She was picked up at the airport by a fellow who had promised her a very lucrative modeling career. He tied her up, he sexually assaulted her, and then he took her to his trailer where she was able to just get hold of her parents really quickly, a couple of seconds, and the police were able to find the geolocation. As they pulled up in front of this trailer to find her, she threw herself out the front window, and they rescued her and brought her back to Alberta. So these kinds of things, this luring, the threats, the coercion are very, very strong once they have a piece of information about a person. This person here was just arrested 2 days ago in the States, and he was sentenced to about 40 years, but again, he had lured about 100 or more kids, young people, into taking sexually explicit, intimate images of themselves, and they were now open to blackmail. So it really is a desperate situation around, sexting, sextortion. Again, the term revenge porn often, sounds like the person, but again, once it hits the internet, it really is monetized and puts these young people, and actually anybody, at great risk. Here in Canada, we have a very powerful tool called Project Arachnid, and it is only for individuals under the age of 18, but they will search for those intimate images and have them removed off the internet. However, if you are over 18, you have to rely on possibly the police helping you, maybe a lawyer, or some other form to find those pictures and have them removed. And like I said before, the young lady I was talking to at the beginning, over the course of 5 years, we have found her videos have been uploaded and taken down and uploaded again over 900 times on different websites. So they've really monetized. They've given a title to the videos, and of course she's been doxxed. So it makes it very, very difficult. For sexting, a lot of the young kids are sexting because they have these photo vaults that make it very easy. It looks like a working calculator or a calendar or a clock or something like that. And of course, you can hide those videos and those photos behind that. However, nothing is 100% safe. The other problem is that sometimes these pictures, if you have them on your phone, are automatically saved and backed up to the cloud. So there was an incident back in a few years back where a number of movie stars, they call it the fappening, and actually their naked pictures and their nudes were hacked into through iCloud, and those pictures are now all over the internet. I mean, they try to remove them, but it's pretty difficult once they've been shared. If you are going to be backing up, or if you've got any of those kind of intimate images on any device, whether it's a laptop or cell phone, be really cautious when you take those devices in to a computer shop or a maintenance shop, because it's just, you can't trust people with those kinds of valuable images. It's just not worth it, of course, to do it to begin with. So I always tell everyone, I tell the kids in schools when I speak to them, I think that as cybersecurity professionals, sharing the knowledge is really important. But, you know, to just be really proactive. To begin with, don't take these pictures. But what they're saying now with the COVID pandemic, there is a massive, like an exponential increase in revenge porn. I guess because it's, you know, more people are at home and this is what they're doing, maybe to pass the time. It just doesn't seem like a very healthy activity. Always a good idea to make sure that you don't automatically have your Zoom or your Microsoft Meets or your Google Meets and Microsoft Teams, and even Hopin. You want to make sure that the camera doesn't automatically get started. So you want to put some defaults in there. You never know what's in the background or what people are doing, just to be on the safe side. You never want to open attachments from people that you don't know. Of course, we all know that. But once these images are monetized on the internet, these people that are doing these perpetrators will do anything they can to get to you. So they will send you memes. They will send you texts and emails with snippets of your pictures so that you now feel like you're going to either send them money or more pictures, because that's really what they want, because they can then monetize those pictures even more. So again, blocking that person, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And again, making sure that you cover your web camera. There are a lot of remote access Trojans out there that can remotely activate your web camera. And we had an incident in the States with Black Shades where a young Miss Teen USA had a laptop in her bedroom, I think for about a year, and was capturing some intimate images of her. This is really important because as with revenge porn, we talk about it being a boyfriend, girlfriend, a spouse, a significant other, or whatever, a partner. If you break up, even if it's a friendly breakup, it's just not worth it. Be really careful, be diligent, immediately change all your passwords. And of course, you might want to check to see if there is any spyware that has been put on your phone. You never know. You just have to be really watchful. It's very easy to do, and you may not know that they are on your device. And of course, be really watchful for any kind of unexpected or an increase in hangups and that sort of thing. And also look for any hidden apps that might be on your phone, as I mentioned. I'll just show you some here. These are very powerful apps, and they can monitor texts and phones and calendars and cameras and everything else. And you may not know that that is actually on your phone. So it's a good idea, you know, having a clean slate when you do break up with somebody, even if it's a friendly breakup. Make sure that you are really diligent just in case. How do you respond? So you find out that you're a victim of revenge porn. What do you do? This is really traumatizing. You need help. You want to talk to a friend, a family member, maybe call a hotline or a helpline, maybe talk to a lawyer. Just get somebody to help you at the very beginning so that you have a support. That's really an important piece. The first thing you're going to want to do is get hold of that website and say, take that picture down. Well, it is illegal for a website to try to say to you, okay, I'll take that picture down, but you have to pay me a certain amount of money. That is extortion. So you don't want to be doing that. Of course, you want to tell the police that when you do report it. The next thing, but one of the most important things that you can do, and I found this through my investigations, is you got to have a file, and you got to start that file, whether it's an Excel, a document on your desktop, whatever it is. You want to start that file. The date, where you found the picture, the date and time you saw that. The URL that you saw it on, take a screenshot of that image, save that, keep it, and start gathering that timeline, because that is really an important piece as well. And like after 5 years and 900 different websites that these photos have been on, that file gets very, very big and confusing. You want to block people. So don't communicate with the perpetrator. They're going to want to talk to you any way they can. They're going to dox you if they can. They're going to look you up in social media. They're going to try and find you on Facebook. They're going to send messages any way they can, texting, email, through dating sites. Don't communicate with them. Change your passwords, and I would highly recommend that you remove your digital footprint. So just get off of Facebook, get off of Instagram. It's just not worth it because it's very, very upsetting. They're going to continually try to talk to you. File a report with the police. This is an important step, and get your police case number. This is illegal. It is illegal to disseminate intimate images of a person without their consent, I believe, in almost every country. So that's really an important piece. Also articulate to the police exactly what's happening. Are they threatening you? Excuse me. Are they, is there an extortion or harassment? Is it repetitive? Have you told them to stop and they continually stalk you onto different platforms? And then monitor. Monitoring is very, very important. And it's very tough for the police to do this. So you may want to hire a monitoring service. And that's very important as well. And I'll talk to you a little bit about this as well. And set up a Google alert, google.com/alerts. Put your name, maybe your email, your phone number in there, and you will get the internet working for you to help monitor. If the police are involved, they have their own tools to request information from different websites. So they have their own process. But you, on the other hand, do not have that. Some lawyers have the ability to send out a preservation order, a production order, to have that evidence seized and held. However, it's not always the case, so you really have to be cautious. Hopefully the police will take on your file, but there's so much of this, it's so prolific, it's very difficult, and very difficult for the police to investigate these files as well, I found. One thing, I don't typically endorse or recommend any products, but I've had some real success with a particular website. It's called Dmca Defender. And Dmca Defender is an organization that monitors, and then they will find those videos and photographs and have them removed. They send out DMCA takedown requests, which is an act in the United States, but most of these websites will recognize this act and remove and comply. The problem is that they will take those videos down, but then they get uploaded again an hour later, a day later, a week later. So you have to stay on top of it constantly. But DMCA Defender, they've got different packages that you can buy. They monitor, and then they will send you a report. That's very, very helpful, especially if you are working with a police officer or an agency as well. I know I mentioned that I am speaking about identity crime as well, and I wanted to kind of build this in so it all flows, because the revenge porn, luring, cyberbullying, identity crime, it all involves social engineering, and this is something that's a really common. There are tactics and techniques and procedures that are used by social engineers that are very common in the real world, you know, over the telephone and online. And so you can see some of these techniques used in luring, in revenge porn, in sextortion, in blackmail, and in identity crime. So for an example, anonymity. There are providers out there that will provide you with a text or an email number that changes every few minutes. So it makes it very difficult for the police to investigate, but it really anonymizes the perpetrator, and it gives them that extra benefit when they are contacting people for revenge or for sextortion and that sort of thing. They have very believable answers if they are questioned at all, because many of them do reconnaissance. They find out where you live, It's easy enough in social media to find out where they work. And so they have that leverage. So they've already done some reconnaissance. And of course, they use that for phishing and spear phishing, business email compromises, malware, ransomware attacks and such. So identity crime, of course, they do a lot of reconnaissance in social media. Well crafted, of course, very scripted in some cases. They could use disguises, obviously. Emotions are huge, and they get people to act against their better judgment because they are emotional. And there's nothing more emotional than revenge porn and blackmail. It really targets your emotions. And identity crime, because somebody now has your personal information, and it's very, very upsetting. So you do react to emotions. They can be very friendly. They can stage events, of course, and just the volumes of those sextortion credential stuffing that they can do, and then send out the volumes. It can be very difficult on the targets and the victims. Here in Canada, of course, we have identity crime. We have a lot of it. It is one of the fastest growing crimes in North America. I know in India, netizens in India are very concerned. They say 83% are very concerned about identity crime. And it's very common, and it takes a lot of different forms. It can be through stolen credentials online. There's so much information out there, personally identifiable information that a person can then gain and collect and then use for their own benefit. I mentioned credential stuffing, phishing, spear phishing, of course, ransomware attacks, and just even old-fashioned mail theft. That is another form of identity crime. It's very easy to perpetrate because credit cards and debit cards are often the target. So I'll kind of cover that a little bit. These days, with the pandemic, everybody's using all these platforms, and the perpetrators have figured out a great way to contact people through a Zoom request. Oh, you're supposed to be at a meeting right now, so I better log in. So they've got the fake login page. Of course, you log in. They then will go in, change your password. Now you no longer have access to your Zoom account, but meanwhile they have access to your photos, maybe your virtual background, perhaps any iCloud meetings that you may have saved, which could be confidential and sensitive. So yeah, this Zoom and all these other platforms are a new, I guess, threat vector for these perpetrators of identity crime and online scams and frauds. Health information, everybody's collecting it. It certainly is a target. It's highly sensitive. So, of course, health data, hacking, and is one of the big ways that it is being exposed in these data breaches. And of course, email, because email is one of our most common business practices. It is open to, of course, human error, but also criminality and all sorts of malicious attacks. With the pandemic, we're seeing a huge increase in watering hole attacks, fake links that are sent out. You don't know where they're going to go, but when you get an email and it's, dear parents and guardians, and you're really concerned about your children, you might just click on that link. And that's what they're hoping for. Of course, the logos of the concerned organizations like WHO, they're asking you to download an attachment that you don't know what it is. It could be some sort of malware or ransomware file. Of course, text messages that we're getting these days. And this kind of thing, again, building that social engineering into it where they build trust. You get these emails from people that put their email, their phone number, their background, their website, everything you'd want to know about this doctor is there. And so you feel pretty trusting when you go to that and you say, yeah, I better check out to see what this very important person has to say. Of course, we're seeing all sorts of counterfeit PPE, and that puts our credit cards at risk if that's what we're paying with. And of course, they say 9 out of 10 of these coronavirus domains are malicious. There has been a 260% increase in malicious URLs since this whole pandemic has started. So, you know, huge risks there. So what to tell people? Of course, you know, strong passwords, huge, very, very important. String random words together, 3 of them, not found in a hacker dictionary, intersperse some special characters. And the big thing to, you know, especially with credential stuffing these days, is to make sure that you don't use the same password on every website that you're going to. That's incredibly important. Of course, using 2-factor authentication, telling people to do this, really important for people that are victims or targets of revenge porn to have their 2-factor set up. Very easy to do and highly recommended. If you don't know if a website that you are using or some sort of industry sector has 2-factor, I really like this website. It's called 2factorauth.org, and you can go into all these categories and find out if they use 2-factor, and you know, highly recommend it for sure, especially if you are a victim of identity crime or have ever been, or any kind of a victim of blackmail or revenge porn. I really like this website as well. It's called Have I Been Pwned? As some people pronounce it, Have I Been Pwned? This is a website that's run by a fellow by the name of Troy Hunt out of Australia. And what he's able to do is gather all the pawned accounts, I guess, and there have been many, many of them. And what you can do then is you put your email address in, and you can tell if your email has ever been pawned in a data breach. And you can find out where and when and what kind of information was taken in this data breach. And then, of course, you can go in, either get rid of that whole email address if you want to, or make sure, of course, that you've changed your password. But it's a good idea to do this, and I know that he who runs this website has signed contracts with governments, with some big organizations to make sure that they're always looking for those email addresses in case of breaches. So there's just so much of this going on. And of course, all that information goes into the dark web. It's traded, it's bought and sold. And of course, there's a lot of credential stuffings on some of those passwords. They're really, really easy to crack. So that's the danger. I wanted to show you this really quickly as well, because our debit cards and our credit cards are easily at risk. These are 3 guys that go into a retail store. And of course, they're all working together. They're super friendly, nice guys, big smiles. They've got the big bags of potato chips. The fellow in the white shirt with the satchel on his shoulder there, he's going to snap on that skimming device on that pin pad. And it literally took him 1 second to do. And then he programs it and he's gone. So the 3 of them are all working together. They send the cashier off to the left to get something else. They're paying with cash. They're smiling. They're talking. They're friendly. They know. They've probably been to this store many times. They know this woman. They've seen her. They know the layout of the store. And of course, they do this. They maybe come back 2 weeks later, take that off. They've got access to all that information. And probably if they spoke to that woman later on, she would never have guessed that those 3 fellows are responsible for this skimming incident. So, you know, that's how good they are. They're very, very professional, and they're quick. So identity crime, a lot of it involves our credit cards and our debit cards. A fellow by the name of Brian Krebs on Security, has done a great job in talking about this and how credit cards, debit cards, skimming devices, always want to make sure that we're looking at those ATM machines that we're using, look for any external. We have a lot of it going on here at gas stations. Just to be really proactive, never write your PIN number down or put it in your wallet. Of course, especially if you've got your debit card and credit card in that wallet with you. slim down your wallet. That's really important. And just be selective. Really check out those debit cards, or pardon me, those ATM machines. I wanted to show you these really quickly because here's some ATM machines, and you can look at them and say, they look a little sketchy. You know, they're not well lit, they're not well maintained, there's dirt, there's graffiti. These 4 ATM machines are in New York City. I took these pictures. Now, this bank of ATM machines, well lit, really clean. You know, you probably would feel fairly safe using them because it looks like they're in a public space where people would maybe walk past. This was in San Salvador. So this is kind of, you know, you would expect it to be different where, you know, San Salvador might look like New York City, but it's just situational awareness, especially when you're using those cards. This is in Calgary. I thought this was quite ingenious. It is at a football game, and in the back of this vehicle is an ATM machine, and there's an actual guard that is there watching, so you feel pretty safe. And of course, at the end of the day, this person drives away with that ATM machine, and it's a pretty safe way of, I think, using it at an event like a football game. Always making sure to look for that secure socket layers, HTTPS in the URL, but that's not 100%. Just to be on guard, be extra vigilant. I think it's a good idea if you have been a victim of revenge porn, a victim of any kind of blackmail on the internet, harassment, cyber stalking, to buy your domain name. Because like I mentioned before, these videos and such take a life of their own online. So you can search for the title of these porn videos and find that video. And it's revenge porn, but they take a life of their own and they get millions of views. It's like watching Gone with the Wind or, you know, another kind of movie. You can search them. So you want to maybe think about buying your domain name after or even before. Be proactive. Maybe even think about buying your child's domain name in advance as well. Shred documents, really good idea, especially for identity theft, because there are people that will go through the dumpsters and they will look in behind law firms, in behind offices that maybe are collecting personally identifiable information. So we want to always shred. Crosscut shredders are the safest, but with your phones, make sure that you turn off your metadata so it's not collecting personal information and sending it for advertising purposes back, such as your calendar, your microphone, your camera, and that sort of thing. If you see something, do something. And I think this is really important within offices, within organizations, to get your employees to really think about the value of security and how important, if they see something, to do something. So I had an incident where when I do presentations, I'll go on to the Canadian Anti-Fraud website. It's our big repository for identity crime information. So one day I go to it and I know what it looks like. It's in English and then in French. So I go to the website and I see this, and it says, "Are you a victim?" And I thought, well, gee, they've changed their look. And I look a little closer and it's got the lorem ipsum. So it's obviously a template. Now, this is a government repository. They have millions of dollars, I'm sure, in grant funding and all the rest of it. Why they would have a lorem ipsum and do such a poor job on their communications, I just thought this was really suspicious. So I go back to the URL and take a closer look. And I see that it says anti-fraud, and then in French, it says anit fraud. So what they've done is they've cyber squatted or typo squatted the Canadian Anti-Fraud website. So that's very brazen of them. But you can see in the anti in French, which people wouldn't know unless they speak French, it's not spelled right. So it's spelled A-N-I-T instead of A-N-T-I. So I call the Canadian Anti-Fraud website and I told them, hey, you guys are victims of identity crime here, or typo squatting or cyber squatting, and because they're collecting personal information from the visitors to that website because people are reporting that they're a victim. Anyway, they were very embarrassed, I think, and very grateful. So I would suggest that, you know, within your companies, within your organizations, if people see something, do something. Report spear phishing, report any kind of suspicious activity, whether it's a social engineering attack or attempts or techniques and tactics that are being used that are kind of suspicious. You want people to phone the IT security people. Within your organization and as cybersecurity professionals, you may be doing some open source intelligence gathering. I always recommend, I am an associate with Toddington International. I think they are a real global leader in training around OSINT. And Dave Toddington, who started this company way back in the late 90s, he will do virtual training as well. So if you're interested, it's just toddington.com for their website, but they're great and highly recommend it because you want to be on legal footing when you do your OSINT, especially for human resources and such. People, it's a great search for people. However, you have to pay, it's a subscription. EchoSec, same thing. It's a great tool and it will help you search Twitter and YouTube and Reddit, all these different platforms at the same time by keyword, by location. It's a great, or by hashtag, it's a really good tool as well. Again, you have to pay for it. TinEye is free. So if you've got somebody that's a victim of revenge porn, they don't have money to hire a lawyer or a Dmca takedown service, and the police are kind of like maybe not going to investigate. Maybe a free service like TinEye will help you monitor anyway and find some of those photos. It is very effective. So I really like TinEye. It's a reverse image search. And the other product I would really highly recommend, it's called Hunchly. And I use it all the time for my investigations. It will create a timeline so you can watch the, capture all the time and date, and they've got all the hashtags. It's or hash marks of the where you're viewing and what you're viewing, when you're seeing it. And you can also create PDFs of your search. So it's very good for exporting your report if you have to give it to the police or you have to go to court or something like that. So it's called Hunchly. It's a Canadian product, Canadian tool, very powerful. A lot of law enforcement use it as well to help them with their searches. These are some great websites. Again, you're going to need help. People that you're dealing with that are dealing with revenge porn, it's really upsetting. Again, Revenge Porn Helpline, Cyber Civil Rights Initiative. Need Help Now is a great Canadian site for sexting, and it's got templates and letters. The other thing I was going to mention with DMCA takedowns, there are some templates out there that you can just create, and then you just put in your own information. And many of these pornography websites will comply based on these templates that you write up yourself, so you don't have to hire a lawyer for some of these takedowns. In the States, IC3 is the catch-all for all their frauds and identity crime. They've got some great information as well. And Kids Help Phone is a monitoring service. If people need help, there are helplines out there for people that do need some help. This is what my book looks like, and I'd be more than happy if you're interested in getting a copy, just order it through Pwned, pwned.ca/CAPR, and I've got that on this slide here as well. It's a great tool, I think, obviously for information. It's got key terms, it's got discussion questions. If you're in a corporation and you've got a special event for Cybersecurity Month, you can use the information for tweets, for posters, and that sort of thing. It's got some really good information around search and seizure and expectation of privacy. That's my information. I've got my website. If you ever want to email me through it, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. I'd be more than happy to help you in any way I can if you're not sure. And I really, again, appreciate this opportunity. I hope that you got a lot out of it. You can share this information with your family and friends and your coworkers. So thank you very much.
Thank you Debbie, for a very informative session, and especially an overview of all the resources available to victims. Now let's get into the questions. Now you were talking about DMCA takedown notices and such, and before that you were talking about what happens in the most cases is when you're served a notice, that same picture or video ends up coming back onto the internet probably an hour, a day, a week later, and how DMCA is probably primarily for the United States. Now, what if an attacker puts it or hosts it on a website out of the United States? So as a victim of, let's say, revenge porn, what options do they realistically have to get something off of the internet?
Yes, really good question. And most of the websites out there will recognize a DMCA takedown request, and they will comply. Pornhub happens to be a Canadian website, but they own dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of pornography websites under their umbrella. So they will comply. The problem with these, they will comply, but people will upload them again to these different websites. So even if the website is hosted in India, for an example, many of them were, most of them will comply. The problem is they go back up again.
Yeah, that's the problem. Okay, so a couple of other questions. Then you were talking about credential stuffing, where they will gain access and they'll start blackmailing you.
Yes.
So there was a question about the blue whale game. Was the blue whale game such a cybercrime strategy?
Pardon me, the blue whale game.
Yes, the blue whale.
Yes. Yeah, it was actually. And, you know, I'm not super familiar with the blue whale game. That was a few months back. And, you know, there are many of these kinds of things that come up, and they're real popular at the time, and then they kind of disappear. So that was one of those that did. So.
And next one, what is the primary demography that identity thieves target? Is there a particular demography that they target for the stealing of the identity and credentials?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thank you for asking that. You know, anybody can be a target, but it seems that seniors are particularly vulnerable to identity theft. Might be because they're somewhat trusting, or it could be that they sometimes have more money, they have more savings, so they are a particular target, you know, targeted by identity thieves. But they do answer their phone. So there's a lot of phone calls that are made to seniors. And of course, they'll stay on the line because they're lonely. And of course, they get talked into going to a website to give the you know, intruder a remote access to the person's computer. So they're very vulnerable because they are very trusting, and they're not very computer savvy. So that's another problem. But, you know, these perpetrators of identity theft, they have no conscience. They don't care who they're stealing money from, and they will go back to the same person over and over and over again to drain them. And they will keep phoning that same person to build on their story. So they're very persistent until they can get in there and steal their money. So, you know, that's a really good question. I would say seniors are the most vulnerable. If you have seniors, make sure that you do some work with them to help them and explain to them that they are at risk, and to be really careful over the telephone, online, especially if they're new online users, and face-to-face.
Okay, last question before I let you go, Kathy. Are there any laws against extortion? And how does law enforcement deal with such cases of extortion and revenge porn and such?
Yes, yes, it is against the law, and that's why you know, some of these new names like sextortion. What is that? Well, it's actually extortion and blackmail and coercion, and so yes, those are against the law. And the police will have to deal with them oftentimes depending upon what it is that's being asked for. You know, is it money? Is it threats to their life and safety? And I do want to add that that victims of specifically revenge porn and luring and cyber stalking and extortion, of course, they're always looking over their shoulder. They always feel like somebody knows who they are because they've, you know, their pictures are all over the place and they've usually been doxxed. So people do know the city that they're in, maybe the area where they work, that sort of thing, where they like to go on holidays, that kind of information. So it's really important that if they feel unsafe, they should call the police emergency line. That's important. The police will deal with this as any investigation. They will interview witnesses. They will gain statements. They will start their investigation. And that's why it's so important to collect that evidence. Keep the emails. Keep any ransom demands, any threads, anything that you can, and give that to the police because they will need that for their investigation. And they've got the tools and they've got the powers, although it is very difficult for these investigations because sometimes they have to work across jurisdictions and they're very multinational, and it's very, very difficult because the perpetrator may live in one country, the website's hosted in another, and the victim lives in another country. So very difficult. But public safety, personal safety that's critical.
Okay, thank you for that answer, Kathy. Before I let you go, I must tell you that's a very impressive backdrop. I think it's the best backdrop we've had among all our speakers. So thank you so much for your time, Kathy. We hope to have you for our future conferences as well.
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.